when he says it, he means it, and you don't get to bend it and twist it to what you want. To reach the lost Israelites, the message has to go to everybody, and then the whomsoever wills will come. The ones who he draws will come. By the way, knowledge meaning what? Having a relationship with the truth. Oh, you learned, and you got tons of information, but have you come into a relationship with truth? So as soon as Marty tells me we're on, we'll get started. We're good? All right, Boker Tov. Good. Good response. Excellent. All right, so I hope, you know, it's funny. Every day it gets smaller and smaller. You guys are going to get like a big smiley face sticker when we're done, I'm telling you right now. I know you were banking on something amazing for showing up every morning. And today is day 4. Oh, by the way, what day is it in the Omer count? Oh, wow, that's kind of matched. Oh, and sorry, in Australia, it's one more day forward. Okay, so part of you, so you're here and your family's ahead of you, you know. And if you want to know the future, tell them that Rabbi Tom wants the lottery numbers. Okay. He did. Yeah. That's great. I know Ollie's been working really hard to try to get that. Awesome. That's fantastic. Okay. So today we're going to cover Matthew chapters 20 and verse 17 all the way through chapter 24. So we're going to pick up in the middle of chapter 20, and then we're going to go all the way to chapter 24 to the end there. And then we have one more day of reading. Now tomorrow, there won't be any readings. Tomorrow is free day, and then we'll pick this up again on Friday, okay? So for those of you that are online, the same thing. Tomorrow, there will be no readings. Tomorrow we call it free day. It's a day that we allow everybody to have time to go off property and see the sights and do whatever they want to do off property. And so we don't schedule anything. Of course, for those of you that are on the staff, we're going to have to take everything in this building and move it over to another building. So for those of you on the live stream, you will see a different background, a little bit different look, because we're going to be in a different building. All right. Let's see if there's anything else. So also don't forget that today after lunch, we've got, we're up to the other page. I get to turn the page here. Here we go. We have the part 2 of the Up to the Challenge teaching. We'll be dealing with yellow and white. And then we'll be doing a dance class in the afternoon, which means I'll be doing my counseling sessions. And then this evening, after supper, again, more counseling, okay? That should do it on the schedule. Okay, just a reminder, if anybody has to leave the property at any point early, don't forget to give back your keys. There is a fee for lost or missing keys, so you want to make sure to get your keys back to us before you leave. Okay. All right, you all ready? Woo! That was not necessarily underwhelming. There's just a lot of people missing. Okay, let's go ahead and get some seats filled. Get our readers up. We're going to have 13 readers again today. So we got 5 seats. So we're going to fill that up 2.5 times. Okay. There we go. I hope you guys aren't watching these goofballs over here. Okay. Now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you guys already know the routine. We've been doing this for a couple of days. We're going to go ahead and get started. Let me get the mic set up here. Get rid of this. Okay. Is that out of the way and in a good place? All right, good. All right, so we're going to begin with Rob. Come on up, Rob. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rob, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rob's going to start us off with verse 17 of chapter 20 and read to the end of the chapter.
And Yeshua, going to Jerusalem, took the 12 taught ones aside on the way and said to them, See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the son of Adam shall be delivered up to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death, and deliver him to the nations, to mock and to flog and to impale, and the third day he shall be raised. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, bowing down to make a request of him. And he said to her, What do you wish? She said to him, Command that these 2 sons of mine might sit, one on your right hand and the other on the left, in your reign. But Yeshua answered and said, You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink, and to be immersed with the immersion that I am immersed with? They said to him, We are able. And he said to them, You shall indeed drink my cup, and you shall be immersed with the immersion that I am immersed with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom he has been prepared by my Father." And when the 10 heard it, they were displeased at the two brothers. And Yeshua called them near and said, "You know that the rulers of the nations are masters over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. But it shall not be among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Adam did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And as they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. And see, 2 blind men sitting by the way, having heard that Yeshua was passing by, cried out, saying, "Have compassion on us, O Master, Son of David." And the crowd rebuked them, and they should be silent. And they cried out all the more, saying, "Have compassion on us, O Master, Son of David." And Yeshua stopped and called them and said, "What do you wish me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Master, that our eyes be open." And having been moved with compassion, Yeshua touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Rob. Rob's going to get right back there towards the live stream desk. Okay, next up we have Manny. Good choice of shirt, by the way. Okay. "He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Manny who's come upon the Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen." Okay, Manny's going to take us now into chapter 21 and read 1 through 14.
And when they came near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, and then Yeshua sent the 2 taught ones, saying to them, "Go into the village opposite you, and straightway you shall find a donkey tied, a colt with her. Loosen them and bring them to me. And if anyone says whatever to you, you shall say, 'The master needs them,' and immediately he shall send them." And all this took place that it might be filled at what was spoken by the prophet, saying, "Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your sovereign is coming to you meek and sitting on a donkey, even a colt, the foal of a donkey." And the taught ones went, and having done as Yeshua ordered them, they brought the donkey and the colt and laid their garments on them, and he sat on them. And most of the crowd spread their garments on the way, while the others cut down branches from trees and spread them on the way. And the crowds who went before those who followed cried out, saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yahweh. Hosanna in the highest." And he entered into Jerusalem. All the city was stirred, saying, "Who is this?" And the crowd said, "This is Yeshua, a prophet from Nazareth of Galilee." And Yeshua went into the set-apart place of Elohim and drove out all those buying and selling in the set-apart place, and overturned the tables and the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to them, "It has been written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer,' but you have made it a den of robbers." And the blind and lame ones came to him in the set-apart place, and he healed them.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Manny. Next up, Shira. "He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shira, who's come up to honor Yahweh and the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen." Okay, Shira's going to take us from verse 15 to verse 32.
But when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonders which he did, and the children crying out in the set-apart place and saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they were greatly displeased and said to him, "Do you hear what these say?" And Yeshua said to them, "Yes. Have you never read? Out of the mouths of babes and nurslings you have perfected praise." And having left them, he went out of the city to Bethania and spent the night there. And returning to the city early in the morning, he became hungry. And seeing a single fig tree by the way, he came to it and found not on it but leaves, and said to it, "Let no fruit grow on you ever again." And immediately the fig tree withered. And the taught ones, seeing it, marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither so soon?" And Yeshua answering said to them, "Truly I say to you, if you have belief and do not doubt, you shall not only do what was done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be removed and be thrown into the sea,' it shall be done. And whatever you ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive." And when he had come into the set-apart place, the chief priests and elders of the people came to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these? And who gave you this authority?" And Yeshua, answering, said to them, "I shall ask you one question too, which if you answer me, I also shall say to you by what authority I do these. The immersion of Yochanan, where did it come from? From heaven or from men?" So they reasoned among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he shall say to us, 'Then why did you not believe him?' But if we say from men, we fear the crowd, for all hold Yochanan as a prophet." And they answered Yeshua and said, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither do I say to you by what authority I do these." One more? 32. "But what do you think? A man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, 'Son, go to work today in my vineyard.' And he, answering, said, 'I do not wish to.' But afterwards he repented and went. And having come to the second, he said similarly. And he, answering, said, 'I go, master.' But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the desire of the father?" They said to him, "The first." Yeshua said to them, "Truly, I say to you that tax collectors and whores are entering into the reign of Elohim before you. For Yochanan came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But tax collectors and whores believed him. And when you saw it, you did not repent afterwards to believe him."
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Shira. You can sit and do it. Stay right there. Okay, can we get the camera to catch her? Candace? She'll be sitting while she's reading. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Candace, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Candace is going to take us from verse 33 to the end of the chapter.
Hear another parable. There was a certain man, a householder, who planted a vineyard and placed a hedge around it and dug a winepress in it and built a watchtower. And he leased it to the farmers and went abroad. And when the season of the fruits drew near, he sent his servants to the farmers to receive its fruits. And the farmer took his servants and beat one, and they killed one, and they stoned another. Again he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did likewise to them. And at last he sent his son to them, saying, They shall respect my son. But when the farmers saw the son, they said among themselves, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and let us possess his inheritance. And they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, when the master of the vineyard comes, what shall he do to those farmers? They said to him, Evil ones, he shall bring them to evil destruction and lease the vineyard to other farmers who shall give to him the fruits in their seasons. Yeshua said to them, Did you never read in the scriptures? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was from Yahweh, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Because of this, I say to you, the reign of Elohim shall be taken from you and given to a nation bringing forth the fruits of it. And he who falls on this stone shall be broken, but on whomever it falls, he shall be pulverized. And the chief priests and Pharisees, having heard his parables, knew that he was speaking of them. And seeking to lay hands on him, they feared the crowds, seeing they held him to be a prophet.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Let's get some help and we'll get Candace down. All right, George. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless George, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, George is going to take us now to chapter 22 and read verses 1 through 14.
And Yeshua responded and spoke to them again by parables and said, the reign of the heavens is like a man, a sovereign, who made a wedding feast for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they disregarded it and went their way, this one to his field, that one to his trade. And the rest, having seized his servants, insulted and killed them. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth, and sent out his soldiers, destroyed those murderers, and set their city on fire. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who are invited are not worthy. Therefore, go into the street corners, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding feast. And those servants went out into the street corners and gathered all whom they found, both wicked and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. And when the sovereign came in to view the guests, he saw there a man who had not put on a wedding garment. And he said to him, friend, how did you come in here not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then the sovereign said to the servant, bind him hand and foot, take him away, and throw him out into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.
Amen. Okay, thank you very much, George. Okay, next up, Bob. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Bob, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Bob's going to continue here in chapter 22 by reading verses 15 to 32.
Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to trap him in his words. And they sent to him their taught ones with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, know that you are true. We know that you are true and teach the way of Elohim in truth. And it does not concern you about anyone, for you are not partial to any man. Then say to us, what do you think? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But knowing their wickedness, Yeshua said, why do you try me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin of the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, whose likeness and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. And he said to them, then give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to Elohim what is Elohim's. And having heard, they marveled and left him and went away. On that day, Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him, saying, Teacher, Moshe said that if anyone should die, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise offspring for his brother. And there were with us 7 brothers, and the first died after he had married, having no children, left his wife to his brother. In the same way, the second also, and the third unto the 7th. And the last of all the woman died too. And at the resurrection, then whose wife of the 7 shall she be? For all had her. And Yeshua answering said to them, You go astray, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of Elohim. For in the resurrection they do not marry, nor are they given in marriage, but are as messengers of Elohim in heaven. And concerning the resurrection of the dead, you have not read what was spoken to you by Elohim, saying, I am the Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Yitzchak, and the Elohim of Yaakov. Elohim is not the Elohim of the dead, but of the living.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay, Jonathan. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jonathan, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Jonathan's taking us now from verse 33 to the end of the chapter.
And when the crowds heard, they were astonished at his teaching. But the Pharisees, having heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, were gathered together, and one of them, one learned in the Torah, did question, trying him, and saying, Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yeshua said to him, You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and great command. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. And when the Pharisees were gathered together, Yeshua asked them, saying, What do you think concerning the Messiah? Whose son is he? They said to him, The son of David. He said to them, Then how does David in the spirit call him master, saying, Yahweh said to my master, Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool of your feet. If then David calls him master, how is he his son? And no one was able to answer him a word. And from that day on, no one was bold enough to ask him any more questions.
I forgot that verse. I like that one. He quieted him up pretty good, he said. Everybody was like, maybe we'll just keep our mouths shut. Of course they don't, but you know. Okay. Becky. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Becky, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Becky's going to take us now to chapter 23 and read verses 1 through 12.
Then Yeshua spoke to the crowds and to his taught ones, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit on the seat of Moshe. Therefore, whatever they say to you to guard, guard and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but with their finger they do not wish to move them. And they do all their works to be seen by men, and they make their tefillin wide and lengthen the tzitzit of their garments. And they love the best place of feasts and the best seats in the congregations, and the greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But you do not be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you are all brothers. And you do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your Father, he who is in the heavens. Neither be called leaders, for one is your leader, the Messiah. But the greatest among you shall be your servant. And whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted.
Oh, I can tell we got questions coming later. Okay, now, just a hunch. Okay, Janice. I might have to go exercise before this and kind of work out and make sure I'm ready for those questions coming. Okay, here we go. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Janice, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May he set apart one, bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Janice is going to take us from verse 13 to 28.
But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the rain of the heavens before men, for you do not go in, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you eat up widows' houses, and for a show make long prayers. Because of this, you shall receive greater judgment. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you go about the land and the sea to win one convert, and when he is won, you make him a son of Gehenna, twofold more than yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the dwelling place, it does not matter, but whoever swears by the gold of the dwelling place is bound by oath. Fools and blind! For which is greater, the gold or the dwelling place that sets the gold apart? And whoever swears by the slaughter place, it does not matter, but whoever swears by the gift that is on it is bound by oath. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the slaughter place that sets the gift apart? Then he who swears by the slaughter place swears by it, and by all that is upon it. And he who swears by the dwelling place swears by it, and by him who is dwelling in it. And he who swears by the heaven swears by the throne of Elohim, and by him who is sitting upon it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you tithe the mint and the anise and the cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the Torah, the right ruling and the compassion and the belief. These need to have been done without neglecting the others. Blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are filled with plunder and unrighteousness. How far, sir? 28. Thank you. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, so that the outside of them becomes clean too. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly indeed look well, but inside are filled with dead men's bones and all uncleanliness. So you too outwardly indeed appear righteous to men, but inside you are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Janice. Okay, I need two more people to come up. Okay, Harold's coming up. I need one more person to come up. Okay? Okay, Janet will be the last one. That's good, because we have 4 more readings, so that's good. Okay, Erica. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Erica, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Erica's now going to take us from verse 29 to 39, which is the end of the chapter.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in the blood of the prophets. Thus you bear witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who did murder the prophets. and you fill up the measure of your fathers. Serpents, brood of adders, how would you escape the judgment of Gehenna? Because of this, see, I send you prophets and wise men and scholars of scriptures. Some of them you shall kill and impale, and some of them you shall flog in your congregations and persecute from city to city, so that on you should come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Hebel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the dwelling place and the slaughter place. Truly I say to you, all this shall come upon the generation. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets and stoning those who are sent to her. How often I wish to gather your children together, the way a hen gathered her chickens under her wing, but you would not. See, your house is left to you laid waste. For I say to you, from now on you shall by no means see me until you say, blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yahweh.
Amen. Amen. All right, David. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless David, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, David's going to take us into chapter 24 and read verses 1 through 14.
And going out, Yeshua went away from the set-apart place, and his taught ones came near to point out to him the dwellings of the set-apart place. And Yeshua said to them, do you not see all these? Truly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another at all, which shall not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the taught ones came to him separately, saying, say to us, when shall this be? And what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Yeshua answering said to them, take heed that no one leads you astray. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and they shall lead many astray. And you shall begin to hear of fightings and reports of fightings. See that you are not troubled, for these have to take place, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and reign against reign, and there shall be scarcities of food, and deadly diseases, and earthquakes in places. And all these are the beginning of birth pains. Then they shall deliver you up to affliction and kill you, and you shall be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many shall stumble, and they shall deliver up one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise up and lead many astray. And because of the increase in lawlessness, the love of many shall become cold. But he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. And this good news of the reign shall be proclaimed in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end shall come. So,
Amen. Amen. Okay. All right, Harold. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Harold, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Or Harold's going to take us from verse 15 to 33.
So when you see the abomination that lays waste, spoken of Daniel the prophet, set up in a set-apart place, he who reads, let him understand. Then let those who are Yehuda flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not come down to take whatever out of his house. And let him who is in the field not turn back to get his garments. And woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing in those days. And pray that your flight does not take place in the winter or on the Sabbath. For then there shall be great distress, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And if those days were not shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the sake of the chosen ones, those days shall be shortened. If anyone says to you, 'Look, there is the Messiah,' or 'There,' do not believe. For false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, and so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. See, I have forewarned you. So if they say to you, 'Look, he is in the desert,' do not go out, or 'Look, he is in the inner rooms,' do not believe. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines to the west, so also shall the Son of Adam be. And wherever the dead body is, there's vultures shall be gathered together. And immediately after the distress of these days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And the sign of the Son of Adam shall appear in heaven. Then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, and they shall see the Son of Adam coming in the clouds of the heaven with power and much esteem. And he shall send his messengers with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his chosen from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. And learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that the summer is near. So you also, when you see all these, know that he is near at the doors.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Harold. Okay, last and up next is Janet. She's going to complete the readings for today as we complete chapter 24. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Janet, who's come out to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Janet's going to take us from verse 34 to the end of chapter 24.
Truly I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away until all this takes place. The heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my words shall by no means pass away. But concerning that day and the hour, no one knows, not even the messengers of the heavens, but my Father only. And as the days of Noah, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. For as they were in the days before the flood, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. Then two shall be in the field, the one is taken and the one is left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one is taken and one is left. Watch, therefore, for you do not know what hour your master is coming. And know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Because of this, be ready too, for the Son of Adam is coming at an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is a trustworthy and wise servant, whom his master set over his household to give them food in season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, having come, shall find so doing. Truly, I say to you, that he shall set him over all his possessions. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant shall come on a day when he does not expect it, at an hour he does not know, and shall cut him in two, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you for all the readers. Thank you, Janet. Appreciate that. I'll take a second here to kind of rearrange the space. What? Oh, there's a little break in the curtain there. came untaped, and that's what happened, so. It's okay. I need more duct tape. I got some, the tape is right behind David. Do you want to grab some tape for him? Okay, he's coming. He's got more tape if you want to just make sure. Due to technical difficulties, please stand by. All right, so here we are. We're going from chapter 20 and verse 17 through the end of chapter 24. Not much here. I guess we can end without too much discussion, but okay. We can certainly skip chapter 23, some other things. Okay, no. I'm excited about the discussion. We'll see where it goes. We're going to try to do this somewhat chronologically if we can. Okay. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. If you live stream, Rob's got the live stream desk, and we could try to work that out that way. I think it's going to be easier to have the mic come to people. I know that we tried to do the lining up thing. That didn't work as well as I would have liked it to work. We got to give it time, keep doing it? No, let's just, okay. So let's make it a little bit easier. So we're going to begin with Candace. If you have it, now remember, this is what we're going to do. First, then we're going to go ahead and try to go somewhat chronological. If someone makes a comment or has a question, I may or may not answer it right away. I may open up the floor for discussion. I may open up the floor for discussion after I answer it. So if you have comments to continue on the subject. So we have to figure out some way to make sure that hands go up until I say next question for the same comment or question. How's that? Because otherwise I'll wonder whether or not your hand is for that same question or if you want another question. So when I say next question, then the hands can go up for the next question. Okay, Candace, go ahead.
Okay, as usual, I have a couple of things.
Wait a minute, hold on, let me get my pen out. Okay, go.
Okay. I would like to know, in 22:11, it says, I want to know what the wedding garment is. Okay. And then a comment, Matthew 22:44 can be cross-referenced with Psalms 110 and 1.
Matthew
22:44. And it could be cross-referenced with Psalms 110:1. 22:7 through 10 about don't call them leaders and don't call them rabbis. Yet I know in one of the other books in the Brit Hadashah, it does say there'll be prophets and there'll be teachers and pastors and so on. Okay. So maybe a clarification on 22:7 through 10.
That's 23:7 through 10, but okay.
Oh, okay. And then I noticed in 23:23 that it used the word compassion, that you should show compassion. And to me, that tells me that in the Torah, there always was compassion.
Awesome.
And that Yahweh was not this mean, ugly dude that wanted to tear everybody apart. And then I want to make a comment on...
I'm not sure everybody refers to him as a dude, but okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay. And then in 23:26 through 28, it talks about them being white. You know, they look good on the outside, but they're whitewashed tombs. Right. That reminds me of when I was in the United Pentecostal Church. Everything was about the outward and not enough about the inward. And everything was speaking in tongues, and so that because you're not saved unless you speak in tongues. And so now I got a brother that tells me the same thing, and I say, look, I did that stuff before. It didn't change who I am inside. You know, that's all outward stuff. I said, now I'm being changed from the inside. To me, that is more important than all this outside stuff that I learned for almost 30 years in the United Pentecostal Church.
Amen.
And I wanted to add a comment. This is from kind of our other Midrash about along the line. I was told for years...
Wait a minute, I think my pen ran out. I need another pen.
I was told for years about leadership that if the pastor told us to get white wall tires on our car, we were to do that. And I don't find that very scriptural. I mean, what would a person do if they didn't have money to buy white wall tires? Would they go out and steal them or what? So anyway,
Okay,
that's
so
it.
make it official. Everybody but Candace, if I tell you to get white wall tires, you have to get them, but she doesn't have to. The crazy thing that leadership people do, like they think it matters, like they should be controlling what kind of tires you get. And I believe that happened. It's unbelievable, but it happens. It's just incredible. All right, so let's deal with some of the stuff on my list here. Actually, some of it was just comments, and that's good, and we can make it a little easier. So, okay, in chapter 22 and in verse 11, and when the sovereign came in to view the guests, he saw there was a man who had not put on a wedding garment. Okay, so first of all, for all those of you that, may have issue with this or not, and I'm not saying we have the definitive answer, but there are appropriate clothes for specific things. Okay? I mean, you're not going to go out and mow the lawn and do work with machinery where clothing can get caught in, with clothing that's loose and flowing all over the place, or your fanciest clothes and it's going to get all dirty or whatever. I mean, you're going to have certain clothes that are appropriate to certain activities. If you work in certain types of industries, you need to wear steel-toed shoes, or in case that could really be a problem for, danger and safety. In other places, it'd be better to wear very soft and comfortable shoes. Just that's with the shoes. But here you're going to the wedding feast, and you're expected to wear a wedding garment. This becomes a big debate with people about how we dress at services. And so we don't have any scripture to say you need to wear a dress if you're a lady, or a man if you're, wear a suit or whatever it is. But I think that, we should be thinking about what's an appropriate garment, if there is such a thing. Now, they didn't dress like we do now. Well, back then, they didn't have the same type of clothing that we do now. And so, I try not to get too involved, specifically, and that's not the answer to, Candace's question. There's we'll get into what the wedding garment is in a minute, but it just brings out the question and issue of clothing, and that's appropriate for the event. Like dressing for Passover, dressing for a holy day. And so I want that just to be something that you're concerned with. But I also want to take Candace's comment about the white wall tires and say that you should be wearing the best or the appropriate thing that you can afford to wear. It's not about trying to extend yourself beyond that. However, if you just save up a little bit of money and buy a new outfit, well, even once a year, buy it at a feast. Use your second tithe. The second tithe is for feast-related things. If you desire a nice, outfit for the holy days, use your holy day money to get one. That's part of the appropriate use of the money. But you know what? Whatever it costs for the nice outfit, it wouldn't take very long to save up for just one. Then you save up for maybe a second one, so you have an alternative one. So I think that most people who say, well, I can't afford it, are just making justifications and excuses. You can't afford it right this second, but you could certainly save up for it a little at a time. And certainly you could use your second tithe. So just keep that in mind. Now, as far as the wedding garment, let me see if I can find a verse real quick to answer that question with. If I can find it quickly enough. Oh, come on, I can find this. Okay, here we go. So in Revelation 19, in verse 7, it says, let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise, for the marriage of the Lamb has come and his wife has prepared herself. Okay, so the wedding garment has to do with something you prepared yourself with. It's clothed in, like being clothed in righteousness. He says, and to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the set-apart ones. So when we're talking about the wedding feast, or the verses here in Matthew, the garment that you need to be putting on is righteousness. That's an important piece that we have to understand. So it's not about clothing here specifically, but we can see let the verses be interpreted by other parts of Scripture where we have these other hints about it. And so it says here that the bride has prepared herself. So don't be looking through this Christianese idea that somehow God's just going to do it all for you. You have to prepare yourself and put on the clothing of righteousness, be clothed in righteousness. Oh, well, we get to just apply his righteousness. Not at this point. This is your righteousness. I know it's filthy rags, but you still have to dress in it. That's the equivalent of it. I mean, it's really not filthy rags. You cleaned them the best you could. You put on the best you had. It's just still stained. And then he then applies his righteousness, and now your garment is pure and clean. But you still got to put them on. And then have it turn into the white and pure cleanness, because you've done your part, and then he does his part. Does that make sense? Okay. You have a comment about that? Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's just a follow-up. So verses 12 and 13, then, the master's angry because they weren't prepared. Is
That's
that
right.
the concept we're trying to
That's
get?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was found not to have the garment on, so he said, you don't belong in here. You didn't do the work. You didn't prepare yourself. You didn't clothe yourself with the righteousness. Throw him out. And there are other places where we get Yeshua saying there are those that will think they're in that are not in, that are going to be a little bit surprised to hear, I'm sorry, but you didn't do what you're supposed to do. Okay? Don't you know people now in your life, they could be adults, they could be children especially, who think they deserve something, but they didn't do what they were supposed to do to get it. But they still think they should have it. And they act all mad at you that you won't give it to them. Well, but I said I would only give it to you if you did this, and you didn't do it. That happens especially with the children. Plenty with the adults too, though. Okay? And so we see that playing out. You know, this section in chapters 22 going forward, and actually in chapter 21 going forward, is really Yeshua saying, I'm pulling out all of the stops and I'm going to blast everybody that needs to be blasted. I'm going to call it like it is. And so all those who think that Yeshua just walked around like a 60s flower child and peace and love and joy to everyone doesn't read Matthew 21 through 23. Okay, now I heard Janice read it, but I'd rather read it a little bit more strongly. Like when he's talking about in chapter 23 and he says, he goes, blind guides. Not just blind guides. You swallow and, do the. He's like, you fools, you brood of adders, you hypocrites. I'm sure he blasted them fairly good. He wasn't just saying, woe to you, you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. I'm not picking on the way Janice read it. She was reading and she was up here and, didn't have the verses memorized. And she wasn't doing the dramatization of it. But I'd like you to feel the dramatization of it. When he says to them, serpents, brood of adders, how would you escape the judgment of Gehenna? And you wonder why they wanted to kill him. Okay? Because he was right in their faces, calling them out. All through chapter 23, he was calling them hypocrites, all about themselves, to do things. And this goes back to what your next question was, which really was about, well, actually, you had 22:44. Let me just see what that was real quickly. Yahweh said to my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies my footstool. Okay, that's just there to show that there is verses, like in Psalm 110, where you get to see that there are hints at there being two Yahwehs, the Father and the Son. Yahweh said to my Yahweh is what it actually reads in some translations. Okay? And so that's where we can see there's two, the Father and the Son. Now, that's a different discussion or a longer discussion we get into. Well, let's get into 23, because I know that's where everybody wants to go play. We all want to go play in 23 because the guy up here is calling himself a rabbi. Actually, I don't call myself a rabbi. Others have called me a rabbi. Okay. I utilize the title. That's not the point. Okay, let's go to see what the point is. Everybody ready for the point? We do have a little teaching called Call No Man Rabbi or something like that, or Do Not Be Called Rabbi. It's an In Focus, and you can watch it, and it's like, 15 minutes long or whatever it is, and it goes through all of this. It's on YouTube, it's on our channel, and it goes through these things. But we'll go through it again real quickly here. Let's understand what's happening here in chapter 23. This is Yeshua beginning a fairly strong scolding, reality call, whatever, to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the leaderships, to call them out on their hypocrisy. You see this all through the chapter, especially beginning in chapter 23 and verse 23. Let's see. Woe to you, Pharisees, verse 13. When he says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. And he says that like 5 times. Now, some of you are going to count and tell me I'm wrong. I didn't count, I'm guessing, all right? I can sit there and count them up, but there's a bunch of them. He starts off with, woe. First of all, saying woe is not like saying woe like slow down like we would do. Woe is like a really strong, like, woe unto you, like misery and like shame on you. You Pharisees, you Sadducees, you scribes. He says, you are hypocrites. Wow, okay? This is the leadership. This is the top leadership. He's going, you guys are hypocrites. So let's see what the problem is. Verse 1 says, Yeshua spoke to the crowds and his taught ones. So context, is Yeshua speaking? Yes. Who's he talking to? The crowds and the taught ones. And the crowds include the Pharisees and scribes. And he says to his taught ones and the crowd, saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit on the seat of Moshe. Therefore, whatever they say to you to guard and do, guard and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. Now, haven't we also had the parable where he talks about the one that would go and say, oh yeah, I'll go to the field, and then he doesn't go. The other one says, I'm not going to go, but he does it. Who's he talking about in these parables? The leadership. Okay, so he's being so gentle here. Because we see this starting in chapter 21 and say verse 28. From there, really forward, you see Yeshua being not so gentle. He's calling them out, and he says, look, you guys who I'm talking about, you're the ones who say that you do, but you don't. And you pick on the ones that say they're not going to, but they do. Then he gives another example about the idea that because of this, the tax collectors and the whores, etc., will get in before you. Don't think that felt insulting and offensive to the leadership? We've already seen other verses where we know that in those days being called a tax collector was pretty like as low as it gets. So the whores and the tax collectors. Wow. And so it says, and when you saw it, you did not repent afterwards to believe him. He says, oh, for Yochanan came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But tax collectors and whores believed him. And by the way, and everything in between. He's going to the extreme to really get in their faces. And then he goes about the man who planted the vineyard. And now he's talking about how they would come and they want to kill him. The son they want to kill. He's calling them out on everything that's about to happen, as well as linking them to all of the ones in the history, which he said, you were just like the ones that killed the prophets. Because you're going to try to go ahead and succeed in killing me. And so he's really, for those out there that just want to say, oh, the God of the Old Testament was so mean. Yeshua was so gentle. Don't you read? You only think he's gentle because you like that he's attacking the leadership. I'd catch that now. See, you see that even today in politics. Whoever's in power, if you don't like them, you love when people attack that person. But if that's your guy, you get upset. Then the power shifts to the other side, and you like the guys attacking that, and then you don't. See, we're very affected by which side we're on. But Yeshua is just saying, I'm going to set things, I'm going to call it like it is. Oh, people get so mad at me. Some of you like it, I know. When I call it like it is and say, well, you really shouldn't call people out. Well, no, everybody should not just be calling people out, but there is a time and place to speak up and call things out if you have that role. And so, but just be careful and not do it if you don't have the role. You don't see everybody doing it. You see Yeshua doing it, which is why I don't think I'm Yeshua, okay? So I don't do this all the time. I'm reluctant and careful about calling out. But he's got to call it like it is. Why? Because he needs his disciples and the crowds who are following, those that would follow him, to know what's really going on and to be able, they're trying to compare and contrast him with the current leadership. And he's saying, you need to know what this leadership is doing. Now, when they sit on Moses' seat, in other words, when they're teaching Torah, that's what that means. When they sit on Moshe's seat, they're teaching Torah, do and guard what they say to do. Because they're teaching you the Torah. That's not a problem. But then he explains in the rest of the chapter what is the problem. And there's definitely a problem here. He says, therefore, whatever they say to you to guard, guard and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens hard to bear, and they lay them on men's shoulders, but with their finger they do not wish to move them. So they're binding heavy burdens. It doesn't say that Torah is heavy burdens. It doesn't say what came from Moses' seat was heavy burdens. It says, you guard and do what they tell you from Moses' seat. He says, but you don't do just whatever they say. Very clearly, he says, but do not do according to their works and for what they say and they do not do. And then they try to throw these burdens on you. These are their own personal judgments and things like that. Like they're telling you what color tires you put on your car, whatever. Okay, now, let's listen to the following as it goes forward. Context. Who's talking? Yeshua. He's talking to the crowds and his taught ones. Now we need to know what's the issue. Okay, the issue is not rabbi, rabbi. The issue is, and they do all of these things to be seen by men. Okay, and actually, if you take out everything after those words and drop down to verse 12, it says, and whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted. That's the issue. And what's in between are examples of self-anointing, self-appointing, self-exalting. So it's not just those things that are a problem, but how they're being applied. It's the exalting of self, to be seen by men. So they make their tefillin, why? Tefillin are the phylacteries that you will see a Jewish person wear, where they bind around their arm and they put the box on between their eyes. It's the Deuteronomy 6, 5 through 9, the V'ahavta, in it, when it says, and you shall bind it as a sign on your hands and be frontless between your eyes. But they make theirs more showy. He says, and their tzitziot are long on their garments. They want to be seen, while mine are much bigger and fancier than yours. They missed the point. The point is that it's supposed to be a reminder to keep Torah. He says, and they love the best places at the feast and the best seats in the congregations. And they love the greetings in the marketplace, to be called by men, rabbi, rabbi. Key phrase, to be called by men. You got to be called by Yahweh to be in a position, not by men. You catch that? To be called by men. They love to hear the accolades. They only want the position to have the accolades. And by the way, it became, well, first of all, let's understand something that's really important as we read this section. Go look up. Don't believe me. Go to Google and look up and ask the question, when were people first using the term rabbi? And you'll find Jewish linkages to the Jewish encyclopedia, wherever it was, where they'll say that it wasn't until the mid to late first century. Oh, you mean that they just started using the title around then? So clearly everybody was walking around using it. Probably not. It really started being used and was prevalent after the destruction of the temple, because the rabbis became the leadership without the priests to be around. They jumped in and became that, but they took that role. And so there was a lot of them after that. So it probably wasn't really an issue here, and probably there are some issues with insertions in this section. I'm just saying, keep that as a possibility. But since it's there, we'll try to explain it in a way that makes sense, that fits the context of the area. Not fits the spin because I like being a rabbi. I don't care. I have my role, and I don't care what you call me. Just be polite about it. However, if you read this section, the next 3 verses that follow, you'll see that this can easily be used to create leaderlessness, no authority whatsoever. Because people want to focus on verse 7, or really verse 8, about the rabbi thing, but they don't read verse 9 and really have an answer for it. And I always, when I get debated about this, I say, fine, I'll answer verse 8 after you answer verse 9. That's simple. Because here's what it says. It says, and they do this to be called by men, rabbi, rabbi. By the way, there are some of the codexes that don't even have that in it. Just go to some of the codexes, which are the ancient manuscripts that they have the New Testament coming out of, and that section isn't even there. Okay? But you do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you are all brothers. Now, first of all, he now defines the term for those who want to argue that rabbi means, oh, my master or my mighty one. No, he says, don't be called rabbi because one is your, he didn't say mighty one or master, one is your teacher. The term literally breaks down into like my mighty one or whatever. But he's telling you that it was understood to mean teacher. Now, some of you have learned language, and we've broken it down into, for example, into the Latin, and see the breakdown of how words are put together. You realize that the word is used not necessarily exactly the way it breaks down. So everybody then understood. And by the way, John tells you this in the book of John, in the Gospel of John. He says, they call it where he mentions rabbi, and he puts in parentheses, which is in the Greek, which means rabbi. Which means teacher. He says that. So you know that they understood it in those days to mean teacher. And I've always told you and explained to you that, think of it like we understand there's a teacher, then there's a professor. Is professor a higher level of teacher? Okay? We expect a different level of understanding and skills and training in a professor over a teacher. And then there's a doctorate level teacher. We expect even higher levels of understanding and training, etc. And so we're coming out of the Israelite side, through Yehuda, we've got the idea of a moreh, a teacher. We've also got the idea of a rabbi. We've got the idea of a sage. Okay? And these are higher level things. Okay, we also have the idea of a nasi. The nasi literally means the prince. But what it really means is the head over other leaders. The head of the Sanhedrin was called the nasi. Okay, so that was, but literally means the prince. Oh, that person thought he was like a prince or a king. It's not the way the word was used. Okay, so you've got Yaakov HaNasi. James of the Nasi in Jerusalem. Okay, so this is something that we really need to understand. Okay, so continuing here, it says, but you do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your father who is in the heavens. Neither be called leaders, for one is your leader, the Messiah. Okay, let's see. We just wiped out rabbis or teachers. We just wiped out parents or father authorities. And we wiped out all the leaders. In just 3 verses. That was pretty swift. Okay, now, let's kind of deal with that verse 9 first for a second. Let's understand it says, and do not call anyone on earth your father. Okay, so I've had this debate with somebody one time, and I asked the question, I knew the answer that was coming. I said, what do you call the human being, the male human being, responsible for your existence? And the person smirked and said, Dad, or Daddy. I said, great, that works in English. How many options do you have in Hebrew? Okay, there's not a whole lot of them. How many did you put your fingers up for, David? There are 2. What's the other one? The Hebrew is Av, and the Aramaic would be Ab. Okay, that's still only one option. It just depends if it's Aramaic or Hebrew. But it would have been Av or Abba, okay? But you don't have like Dad, Daddy, Pop. You know, we got so many ways to say it in English. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't formally refer to their father and say, Father, you know. Listen, this may sound dumb, but I remember seeing just a few minutes, for whatever reason, of The American Werewolf in London or some movie years and years and years ago. And there's a scene where he's transformed back into a human being. He's naked after transforming. He runs through the park and grabs a balloon from a kid. This is in England. And the kid goes, Mother. No, I think it was Father. Father, a naked American man stole my balloon. Father. Now, some of you do that. My wife actually refers to her father, he calls him father, okay? But we generally don't. But think about it. He's talking to a Jewish group. And these Jews, he just told them, I'm sorry, you can't call your father, I don't know, anything. You're stuck. What are you going to call them? By their name? That's not respectful. And so people don't think about that verse. So what they'll do, you ready for this? They play a wonderful game. Well, you know, in verse 8, he's talking literally, you cannot use that title. But in verse 9, that's talking about it on a spiritual level. Don't refer to somebody as like your spiritual father and all. But then in verse 10, now it's back to literal again. Does anybody actually talk that way? Do people actually do those kind of weird games when they're speaking? But I literally watch people talk about these verses who really want to attack the title rabbi, but they know they have to deal with verse 9. And say, well, that one's spiritual. That's not literal. It's more of a metaphor talking about, like, you know how in the Pope is called the Holy Father. It's talking about that kind of father. Don't be called like that. Okay, then why don't we do that with the other two? So did you catch what I'm saying? Okay. So then we have on top of that, he says, and to be called by men, rabbi, rabbi, don't you? Okay, now, with the rabbi thing here in verse 8, he says, but you do not be called rabbi, because, now he's talking to who? The crowds and his taught ones, the ones who were with him. You are my students. So we might read into this and glean out of it that you shouldn't call anybody rabbi unless they're your rabbi. In other words, it's not like a title like doctor, and everybody just calls you doctor even if they don't use you as their doctor. Okay? I mean, if you're a medical doctor or a dentist or something like that and use the title doctor, why would I need to call you doctor unless I am your patient? If you're not my doctor. Well, because to be seen by men, I like being called doctor. Everybody needs to call me doctor or professor or whatever. Well, look, I think we could be gleaning into here that you have a couple of problems. The main issue, what's the issue? To be seen by men self-exalting. That's the main issue. And so these people wanted everybody to call them rabbi. That could be the problem that's going on here. They wanted to be exalted instead of just their students who were being served by them, instructed by them, to respectfully refer to them as their teacher, their rabbi. Does that make sense? Okay, bring the mic back to Rabbi Tom.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just to bolster what you said in Yochanan or John chapter 3, they called Yochanan rabbi. And I checked that out in the Greek, and rabbi is there in the Greek. John 3:26. Mm-hmm. And then it says, of course, people get hung up over father, call no man father. But I couldn't find the exact reference, but in 2 Kings, when Eliyahu was taken up, Elisha looks after him and says, my father, my father. So he calls him father. So when it says call no man father and people say you shouldn't use the term father, they're off track there.
Well, they're off track. But also when we interpret, okay? Now again, a lot of people are saying, you're just making all the strong argument because you like being a rabbi. I think that's an interesting term, saying I like being one. Come spend a day doing what I do and figure out if you think I really like being one. I love that I have the opportunity to do what I do. I don't always like being one, okay? The understanding, though, that we're talking about here is that it has to be contextual. Okay, Rabbi Tom helped us get some context with it. There were the hypocrisy is to say, well, he was just attacking something that people were absolutely doing and never doing it wrong. John did it. Okay, well, this is talking about Yochanan. It says they call him rabbi in John 3. Okay, so here's the thing. Context always is critical. I'll just call it context is king, but it's the most important thing when you are trying to interpret something. So you must understand what the issue is. The issue was not semantics or terms. The issue was how they were using them. The issue was exalting self and to be seen by men, because that's what starts, and it's kind of got the two bookends on each side of that whole idea. It starts off where he says, and they love to do these things to be seen by men. Okay, they say that, and they like to be called by men. And they do all these things, verse 5, they do all these works to be seen by men. And then we have in verse 12, when we finally get there, or verse 11, it says, the greatest among you shall be the servant, and whoever exalts himself shall be humbled. It's the exalting of self. And so you got to be really careful with that, Dawid.
Just to, if I can, support a little bit what you're saying. From the Hebrew side of things, when you're speaking in Hebrew, Todah Rabbah means abundant thanks or thanks very much. When you say Shalom Rav, you're saying abundant peace. Rabbi is related to that root of abundance. And so when I call him Rabbi, I'm calling him my abundant one. Abundant in what? Abundant in Torah. Because I'm expressing to him the fact that I trust him and submit to him, even if I don't necessarily agree with him. And I do the best of my ability joyfully. It's not that I'm being blind about following him. I'm not following him blindly, but I'm doing my best to submit to him, even though I may not, in one particular point in my own mind, agree at that moment, but I'll go back and figure out on my own, okay, this is what's going on, and compare it to what he's saying. And I mean, I've done that before with various stuff at various times. But I always come back to the point that where I vetted him initially, he's right. So frequently, I keep finding out when I go back, don't question at the time, but go back and check, and he's right. And so he's my abundant one in Torah, and I trust him in that regard. And so that's what it's about. Now, if he was to try to declare to all the world that he's the abundant one in Torah, do you see the difference? It's a huge difference.
Okay, and also if I needed everybody to refer to me that way, and I don't, okay? But the thing is, you have to also understand the Hebrew. Rabbi means mine. Okay, the ending of the word says whether it's mine, yours, ours. You've done this when you've learned languages, the conjugating of verbs and that kind of thing. So there's a way to end things. And so, like, for example, in some of your scriptures, you can read in Genesis 26 when it talks about how Abraham kept the Torah. The word Torah there would have been, my commands or my Torah would have been Torah-tai, not Torot. Okay? But people are used to Torot meaning plurality for the Torah. Okay, so this is why we have to understand that sometimes it says Elohim, sometimes it says Elohecha, sometimes it says Elohai, sometimes, because it has to do, the ending decides who's being referred to. Is it mine? Is it yours? Is it ours? Okay? And so this is all talking, again, specifically to the idea of don't call somebody your rabbi unless they're your rabbi. He says, right now, I'm your rabbi. This is what Yeshua is saying. There's one, I'm your teacher, Messiah. So why you need to have somebody else going around? I'm your teacher. See, and by the way, not only does it happen today, where I'm a lot of yours, the teacher for a lot of you, or some of you still are seeking other teachers. Guess what? Even those with Yeshua right there, we're still listening to and seeking other teachers. They're saying, stop doing that. And so these men were running around, but the most important thing is that we get the context. It's about to be seen by men. And then he spends a huge amount of time calling those same men hypocrites and ripping apart everything that they were doing in hypocrisy. 8 times. Okay, 8 times, thank you. All right? I knew it wasn't 5, that's why I said, I'm sure somebody's going to count and figure it out. The thing is, it's a lot of times. And so can we please, look, if you don't want to call me that, don't. But stop getting hung up on it. That's not what the verse is talking about. Okay? You nowhere anywhere else do you see that the scripture says that they have an issue with a title. I mean, even the word Elohim is given to pagan gods. It refers to all things worshipped. Yahweh clearly doesn't have a hang-up on titles. He makes it clear, though, that he says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Elohecha. Okay? I am your Elohim. That's different. And so let's understand that. So hopefully that, I knew what somebody was going to ask, and I'm glad Candace did, so we got this out of the way. But any questions or more comments about that, I hope you get that. Okay? This whole section is an incredibly strong, scathing, public exposure of the current leadership by Messiah to the crowds and to his students, to expose them for what they are. Okay. That pretty much covered mostly everything you said. Okay, so who's next? Next question. Okay, over here, Dale.
So when you mentioned Nasi, that it was connected to the Sanhedrin, so in terms of yourself, Rabbi, do you have a Nasi over you, or do you have other men that you are accountable to?
Yes, and so in our leadership group, actually I'm referred to as the Nasi. And actually that works for some of the people that have a challenge with the term rabbi. They just call me Nasi. Well, which in a sense is a higher title anyway. So I get that. I mean, because we do have one or two people in our group that are in the leadership that, really don't see Matthew 23 the way I do, and that's fine. So they just call me Nasi. Okay? And you'll see that sometimes in the general sessions or even on Tuesday night studies, I'll type in front of my name, Nasi, Steve Berkson, instead of Rabbi. Okay? And so part one to your question is, that's actually a title that I use. When it's appropriate, I use it generally when I'm with other leaders. So then that gives the structural hierarchy. Okay? There are other teachers that eventually might receive the title rabbi, and then I would be the Nasi in the group. Okay? As far as anybody above me, not at this time. Not that I wouldn't look and try to find one. Now, as far as accountability, plenty. We have a meeting once a month. We used to do it twice a month, or every other week, which came out to a little more than twice a month on average, where we have about 20 men, give or take, who shows up that week, who are leaders within the organization, within M2I, who are leading small or larger fellowships around the world, who come for accountability and for working. The idea of, remember what M2I is about, working together to serve the body more effectively, or as effectively as we can in the hands of Yah. And those are people that I have as accountability partners. That includes people like Rabbi Tom, who was commenting earlier, who have been given, remember, accountability has to be something you agree to. You can't just go and choose to be accountable, and I'm going to hold somebody accountable. They have to choose to allow you to be accountable with them. And those people know that if they see me doing or hear me doing anything that they think is way off or going off in the wrong direction, that gets to be brought up in front of everybody at a meeting. And we deal with it and we talk about it. So that generally never happens because you know what? I'm not a dictator, so I'm aware that I have to be concerned with accountability. See, you have a lot of organizations that really go woo off to the side because there's no accountability. Now, true, the burden of responsibility to make decisions is mine. Okay, so that is mine because you know what? Because it's my vision. The vision that was given to me is what I need to have authority to protect. The vision for what this organization is trying to accomplish to please our Heavenly Father in the way that I feel the vision was given to me. So I can't give that authority to anyone. However, the leadership that's in there would be very free, and they know they're very free to share with all of you if all of a sudden I'm trying to take this thing in a kind of crazy direction or something. So there is accountability there. Does that make sense? The problem is with the vertical chain, yes, everybody's in the middle there, and they should find someone to cover. At some point, you get in the human level, you get to the top. Can we all agree? I mean, at some point, somebody has to be at the top. And that's where I'm at the moment. Will I find somebody at some point to come under? Who knows? Okay? I'm not at the top because I think I'm so smart and I need to be the top and there's nobody better than that or whatever. I just haven't found anybody. How many of you found to teach like I do? Who would you have me sit under? I'm not trying to be cocky or I'm being just honest. I'm just being honest. If you think there's somebody I should be sitting under, please tell me. Okay? Okay? You going to tell me? Okay, Dawid's got an answer. This will be interesting.
I have been 20 plus years in the Messianic looking around for who I needed to come under and eventually realizing I needed my own discipleship, okay? I have been 20 plus years looking for somebody like this man, somebody who teaches the word and doesn't water it down, who teaches the entire book and doesn't try to pick out books at whim and say, oh, this guy's not here, or this guy's bad for this reason, or whatever, and then make it threadbare scripture where there's practically nothing there at all. Okay? This man teaches the book. He teaches it straight. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't tickle ears. He's the only one that I have ever known that does this. And I have been under a lot that I thought for a second did that. But then they would, for whatever reason, get to the point that they were tickling somebody's ears here and there. Okay? This man, I have yet to see him do that. Not saying he could never make a mistake or that he's not human, but I have never seen this man do that. He's the only one I have ever vetted out in 20 plus years of doing this in the Orthodox, Christian, or Messianic. Doesn't matter. He's the only one I've ever known to have been like he is. And I have no one that I would prefer him to be under other than Yeshua himself. That's my opinion.
Amen. Amen. Appreciate that. I don't know that I ever said it before, but that's going to be my new answer, is that when people ask me, well, who are you under? I said, do you have suggestions? You know, because they always want to say, oh, well, you preach that real strong that we need to be under somebody. And, of course, you're hinting that it should be you or whatever they think. So who are you under? You have ideas? Recommendations? Okay? I mean, that's, you know, turn the thing around sometimes. You know, by the way, when people come to you and attack you about things, don't feel afraid to just turn it around the other way. Okay? They want to put you on the spot. Well, turn it around. Put them back on the spot. Okay? Because they like having you be on the spot. They're not always so comfortable when it gets turned around. Okay, next question. Oh, come on, Candace, you already had 5. I've already gone through 2 pens. Okay, what do you got?
Okay, one is a comment, and then one I just want to read a couple of scriptures that verify what you're saying.
Okay.
When I first got into this way, I actually met a Karaite Jew who was a rabbi, and I would address him as rabbi, and he would correct me. He would say, but I'm not your rabbi. So you can't call me rabbi unless I am your rabbi. So I just wanted to...
You sure you were talking to a Karaite Jew?
Yeah, he was a really
Karaite
nice
Jew doesn't
guy.
want to have anything to do with rabbis of any sort, the title, the people, or nothing.
Well, I say Karaite because he followed only what was in the Old, the Old Testament.
All right, so he's non-Talmudic, but I'll tell you what,
Right.
those Karaites are not using the term rabbi.
Okay.
And that's not because they think it's a wrong term. They just don't want to connect themselves to those guys at all. Okay, they're totally non-rabbinic. And so the person who claimed he was Karaite leaning or something. Okay?
No, I call him Karaite.
Well, you call him, okay.
Because he was just in the
Tanakh
Torah.
only, no Talmud. I get it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and then I just want to read out of Ephesians 4, starting at verse 10. He says, and he who went down is also the one who went up far above all the heavens to fill all. And he gave himself some as emissaries, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as shepherds and teachers, for the perfecting of the set-apart ones, to the work of the service, to the building up of the body of Messiah. So right there in Scripture it says that he does appoint different ones for different purposes to help build up the body.
Amen. Amen. And then notice that some of them are teachers. And of course, that's not necessarily the same word as rabbi, but it has to do with a level of teaching. Okay, so we're just looking at different levels of teaching, just like we have that in English. All right, professors, doctors, teachers. All right. Okay. Who's next? New question? Okay, Sherry?
Yes, this is in regards to the book of Matthew that I'm seeing a lot of. Basically, it's kind of like what you do, saying that our walk needs to really be perfected to be more like him, and the difference between those that are not walking and those that are walking. And then I was noticing some other things. In Matthew, going back in Matthew 13:41, it talked about the gathering of the stumbling blocks, and then in the same chapter, in verse 30, it talked about the gathering of the denau. And then going back down, in Matthew 15:13, it talked about the uprooting of the plants that were not his. And then in Matthew 24:39, I had never really looked at it quite like this, but in 38 to 39, it says, "For they were in the days before the flood, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark." Well, that's usually how, in the past, I have looked at, oh, that's how you're going to know the end times. But what I didn't realize was in 39, and they did not know until, and he's talking from what I'm gathering of the sinners, did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. And there again, he's talking about there's going to be a gathering before, the Christians have it the other way around. But it's going to be the taking out of those that are not following the Messiah. And so I see a lot of that. That's just a comment, and I thank you again.
Thank you. And by the way, let me just read from Proverbs chapter 2, in case anybody doesn't understand. It says in the end of the chapter, the last two verses, it says, "For the straight shall dwell on the earth, and the perfect be left in it, but the wrong shall be cut off from the earth, and the treacherous ones plucked out of it." So who gets left behind? The righteous get left behind, which is the opposite, of course, shocking, I get it, of what, we read in these books that people are putting out in the mainstream, okay? Apparently they didn't read that was actually literally talked about in Proverbs. It's right there, 21 and 22. Proverbs chapter 2, the last two verses. In case you don't want to remember, in case you can't remember the verses, just look at the last two verses of chapter 2. It says, "The righteous ones will dwell in the earth, and the wrong ones are cut off. The treacherous ones are plucked out." That sounds exactly the way they describe it the other way, that the righteous are plucked out and they leave all the other ones behind. No. Now, I don't mean plucked out and left behind. Not like they're not going to be taken out like the visuals that you get out of mainstream. Okay? They're going to be just dealt with. Okay? They're not just going to disappear and vanish while people are driving their car and it crashes and all that other dumb stuff you see in the movies. And by the way, I love the way they depict how the righteous one was the pilot and so the plane crashes. Well, that was very nice. Let's just kill a whole bunch of people because the righteous one got plucked out. Cars are crashing, planes are crashing. Disasters are happening everywhere because, hey, those righteous needed to leave. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, next question. Okay, over here, Jeremy. And by the way, Jeremy's one of the guys who gets to go to those meetings every month. Okay, so you can talk to some of these people and ask them what those are like, and is there really accountability there? Okay, go ahead, Jeremy.
All right, so she mentioned about the signs of the end, like the days of Noah. Now here in Matthew 24, let's see here, 21, it says, "For then there shall be great distress, such as not been since the beginning of the world." Okay, so that kind of makes me think that it goes before the days of Noah. So is that referring to the days of Noah, or is that kind of like in the very beginning where light came into the darkness?
Okay, so what he's trying to do is he's trying to make sure that you understand, and he says that there's going to be wars and fightings and terrible things and all these other things going on, but the real thing when it comes is going to be like nothing we've ever seen. It's going to be on a larger scale beyond what we've seen. Now, the days of Noah are mentioned, so we understand that they were just going about life, thinking everything's going to be fine, nothing bad's going to happen until it actually happened. Okay, that's the part that's going to be like in the days of Noah. It's not going to be a flood because he promised he's not going to do a flood. It is going to be like in the days of Noah where they were having, their hearts were on evil continuously. And Yahweh decided it's time to wipe this out. And so that's the comparison. What he's trying to tell you here is when you see terrible things happening, unless you can understand that it's the worst than anything that ever has happened and ever will be, it's just another terrible thing happening. It may be leading towards that. Because Noah had the most terrible thing happen. The flood wiped out everything but him and his family. That's worse than any world war. That's worse than a few nuclear bombs. That's worse than all these things that we think are so terrible. Any plague. Literally everybody but the ones on the boat were killed. The 8 of them, that was it. And so he's saying this is going to be like unto that, but worse. I don't know how that could be worse. I mean, the flood took out everybody, but this is going to be more, I guess, spectacular in the types of horrific things that are happening. Okay? That was a flood that just came down and just drowned everybody. There's going to be all kinds of horrible things happening at that time that would wipe out everybody. That's what you read in Revelation, the pouring out of the different things that are being poured out as the seals are open and the vials are poured out and all these other things that are happening. Okay. Anybody else on what Jeremy said, or is it a new question? Okay, new question. Okay, live stream.
Jocelyn Blakesley, she has a question on Matthew 22:14. Says, do you think it means that we, as Israel, are chosen now to be judged by Yahweh, and others will be judged at Judgment Day?
Okay, it says, for many are called, but few are chosen. Now, let's understand that, first of all, I do agree with that comment. There's other verses that say it actually even more clearly. There's a verse that says, judgment is now on the house of Israel. I have a teaching. It's called, which teaching are we referring to for this answer? Come on, somebody knows. What's the one that talks about the judgment is now and whether judgment's at come on. What teaching? The millennium. Okay, the millennium and kingdom. Well, you guys are, okay, F on everybody. Everybody gets an F. Okay, maybe a D minus or something. We'll just kind of, okay. All right, there is a teaching that addresses this, the process of how this works. All right, how the resurrections work, how the judgment works. But we do have a verse like this one here about many are called, but few choose. And really the few are chosen means few choose to hear the call. It's better, the phraseology here in English is bad. Okay, many are called. He pokes a lot of people, disturbs their peace, opens their eyes, but not everybody he does it to chooses to heed, to respond to the call. Okay, many are called, but not everybody responds. Look at what happened when they came out of Egypt. A lot of people, not very many responded. 2. Okay? Because that's all that went across from those men over 20 years old that were counted. It was 603,550 or something like that. And yet Joshua and Caleb are the only 2 that made it. And so many are called, but few choose to respond appropriately to the call. But then to answer the question, is that correct understanding? I would say yes. There's a little more to it than just yes, but yes in general. But recognize that there is a verse that actually comes straight out and says, judgment is not on everybody right now. Judgment is on those that are covenanted, those that have their eyes open, their ears open, have made the choice. But he also says that those are the ones that get to be in the first resurrection. And he said, blessed are those who are in the first resurrection. And so there's an extra blessing for being called now, because right now is actually the hardest time to be called. Because we're dealing with a world without Yeshua physically in it. Because when the millennium starts, he'll be here. So it'll be a lot easier for people then in some ways. It's a lot, there's a long to answer this. So listen to the Millennium and Kingdom teaching to get the full answer. But yes, I would agree with your comment that generally speaking, most people end up dealing with when Yahweh is sitting on the throne, Yeshua is sitting on the throne with the judgment, but we are actually being judged right now. This is our time. This is our chance. This is our opportunity. Our eyes are open. Our ears are open. Our hearts are open. We understand enough that we can choose to submit to covenant. Are you going to obey his voice or not? That's really where we're at. So good question. I'd love to give the full answer, but we have only about 40 minutes to finish what we're doing now, and that would just take up more than the whole time. Okay, on the same question or a different question? Okay, so bring this up to Shauna. Okay, Aubrey, was those on the same question or different one? Okay, so I feel good that I'm actually getting most people's names. Go ahead.
Good job. Okay, so I know you've taught before in the millennial kingdom that everybody has to be tested, right?
Yep.
Everybody has to be given an opportunity to be humbled and tested.
Deuteronomy 8:2.
Yeah. So we know there's a first and second resurrection. And the first resurrection is for those who are already walking in his ways, right? And everybody's going to live. Everybody who's alive will be tested. How are the people who are going to be in the second resurrection tested?
Okay, so that's a good question.
Do you know
I think
what I
I
mean?
explained that in the teaching. I don't remember now. I haven't listened to the teaching since I did it, so it's a long time ago. So that might be one we'll refresh, and maybe we'll actually do part 4. It could happen. Everybody's been waiting on part 4. Okay, now, hold on. Okay. Not probably the right forum to try to really explain all that because you covered a bunch of things that not everybody knows how I taught what you just said. But let me try to explain it a little bit, I guess. Just keep in mind that it does talk about a first resurrection. No reason to ever refer to something as first unless there's more than one. Okay? So recognize that if he calls it the first resurrection, there's going to be at least a second. Because why would you number it? You just call it the resurrection. Okay? And so the fact that there's one and it's called first, there must be a second at least. Okay. Now we are told that those in the first are those that will be changed in the twinkling and those that died in Messiah. So you have those that will rise in Messiah and those that are alive in Messiah, changed and meeting him in the air. Of course, most Christians have never thought to ask the question, where is he going? Well, when we see him in the air, we know where he's going. Zechariah says, to the Mount of Olives, and it's going to split in two. It doesn't say he's coming, so whisk everybody out of here, and then come a second time after the second time. Well, that would be the third time. So it's going to be the second coming. No, it says that when he comes, we'll all see him. And then we're told where he's headed, Mount of Olives. And so we all should know those things. Okay, so those will be, so it says that we will meet him in the air and forever will be where he is, well, wherever he goes. And where's he going? He's going to the Mount of Olives. He's not going back to heaven. He's coming here. And to start the millennium, where he's going to stay here, and he's going to rule and reign for 1,000 years. Okay, so, yeah, I'm into that, okay? All right, so, at that time, there'll be about a third of the population still alive, because we're told a third will die this way and a third will die that way, and leaves a third left. And there'll be those that have been resurrected and those that have been changed. So there's kind of two different statuses, because within the first resurrection, some people will actually still be alive and just be changed. Okay? Now, but there's going to be roughly, if it's today, I don't know, almost 3 billion people, give or take, whatever. It's almost like 9 billion people on the planet or something like that. So we have about 3 billion people still alive. That's a lot of people. And then what about all the people that ever lived that now have, and again, explaining what she meant by having that opportunity, you'll have to listen to the teaching. I don't have a lot of time to explain that. But then there will be, what about those people that died and never had their eyes opened and their ears opened? Are they just doomed? You know, Christianity really does make you think that. Did I get that wrong? I was never in mainstream. Does Christianity make you basically think that anybody that did not hear, that they're pretty much out of luck? Okay, but is Yahweh a respecter of persons? No. Is he fair? Okay, so then that can't be possible, because that would be respecting persons and completely unfair. So I believe everybody gets one chance to pass the Deuteronomy 8:2 test, to show that you're humbled and that it's in your heart to keep the commandments. That's what I've called it, the Deuteronomy 8:2 test. It's not called that by anybody else or anywhere else. I may be the only teacher that teaches that Deuteronomy 8:2 is even important, okay? But it has been an obsession in my teaching since the first day I started teaching. Somehow that verse was given to me to say, this is the test. You're walking through your journey like the wilderness. That's how the verse starts. How Israel walked through the wilderness for 40 years. your life, we'll call 40 years your life, you walk through your life, your wilderness journey, to be humbled and to prove, to show him, whether it's in your heart, to keep the covenant, which means to keep the commandments, to submit to his authority. Now, all those people that have never heard of a Bible, never heard of Yeshua, never heard of Yahweh, never heard of anything about Torah, those people are just doomed? That's ridiculous. So they haven't had an opportunity yet. So the question that Sean is asking, so what happens to them? How do they get tested? Well, they get resurrected. That's why there's 1,000 years. They're going to get resurrected during the 1,000 years, and they're going to have to walk the walk. But then there's a really weird thing that happens at the end of the 1,000 years. What happens right before the end of the 1,000 years? Hasatan gets released. Why? He's locked up. It doesn't, I kept thinking, surely it means he escaped, right? No, he gets let go. He doesn't escape. He gets freed. I'm like, why would you do that? He was chained in the bottomless pit. He was locked up. We had nothing to worry about with that part of the whole deal. Of course, we still had to deal with ourselves, which, by the way, is more than enough trouble. Why does he get released? To answer your question, everybody has to be tested. His job, his role is to test us. He's the tester of the brethren. So everybody needs to experience that. So even those that are resurrected during the millennium who have the freedom to learn Torah without Hasatan in your ear driving you crazy, they have to have that moment where he's in your ear driving you crazy to make your choices, to reject the temptation. Because Yahweh's not going to have any doubt when he gives you your eternal life. He's not going to have any rebellion. He's going to know that you cannot be tempted. That you cannot be tempted. And by the way, at the end of the millennium, what happens when Hasatan's released? A whole bunch of them still go with him. And you sit there going, what? Because they'd never experienced the temptation stuff that comes from him, where he pulls out of you all of your baser instincts, all of your baser desires, and gets you to deal with them, to see if they will tempt you to go astray. That's his job. That's his role. He doesn't know it. I guess he knows it, but he doesn't know it. He doesn't have a relationship with it. It's an informational thing because he reads the word. He knows the word better than we do. But he doesn't understand that he's being used. He's being allowed to do things because it serves Yahweh's purpose. All things are allowed or caused because they serve Yahweh's purpose somehow, even if we don't get it, including Hasatan, the rebel that he is. The devil himself serves a purpose. And that purpose is to bring out of you the stuff that needs to come out so it can be dealt with, so that you can be cleansed and healed of all that yuck and be useful in the kingdom, to be trustworthy in the kingdom. Did that answer your question? No. Okay, it doesn't give us and this is the second, and this is the third, and this is the fourth that way. There will be resurrections, because I don't think he's just going to bring all how many billions of people have ever lived all out at the same time, because believe it or not, we are going to be teaching them. Those in the first resurrection, those who are changed, those who died in Messiah and are resurrected, are going to be now given, just like it says in the parable with the cities, and given so many cities and that many cities. Think about if there's only 144,000, just to pick a number. How many people does each one of them get when there's 3 billion people alive? It's a lot of people each. When you divide out 3 billion into 144,000. And you're going to have a responsibility to teach them. Okay, and then you can go to Micah 4, and you can see where it says, and each one will walk in the name of their Elohim while we walk in the name of Yahweh our Elohim. And that because of that, people will walk and feel safe. Because you will be Elohim to those people. In the straight vertical alignment. Just like we look to Yeshua. Yeshua says, but I'm under the Father. We are going to be in an alignment. And as we are changed to be of the Elohim stuff, there will be people that will be looking at us that way, yet we will be completely under Yeshua, under the Father. In a hierarchical structure. And that's all explained in the Millennium Kingdom. Possibly not well enough, so I might need to redo it. Okay? So hopefully that's starting to explain the question, okay? All right? Okay, you want to ask about the same thing, Kathy? Okay, wait, where's the mic? No, we're going to give you the mic. Hold on. Mark's going to give you the mic. Okay, pass it to Kathy.
Okay, we were discussing the other morning about the 144,000, if that was literal.
I don't know what to do with that number yet.
Okay.
Okay? I've not really pondered it very heavily because, as you all know, at this point, Abba has me only focusing on halakhic things. Teach them what to do, and they will be just fine. Okay? Teach them what to do, how to do it with the right heart and the right spirit. That's my mandate right now. So as much as I would love, as many of you do, to line up the eschatology and get into all that, believe me, I would love to do it. I'm a puzzle guy. Okay, I love nothing more than something that's a puzzle. And I'd love to be digging up Daniel 9 and Matthew 24 and Revelation and piece all these symbolic things together. But he knows if I did that, I wouldn't be able to do the other stuff. It would be too distracting. It's like the Godzilla-sized squirrel. Squirrel. Okay? For all you ADD people. Instead of squirrel, it's like, wow, squirrel. That'll keep me busy like forever. Okay? Okay, so just so we get that imagery. Now, I will try to dig into some of this stuff because it's necessary to explain. Look, I've got two teachings basically that deal with that. I've got the Beware False Prophets that deals with a little bit of the end times and the Millennium and Kingdom. Only because they are needed to explain the concerns we have for those that we love, what happens when they die, and are they just doomed and all that kind of stuff, and I try to help with that. Now, actually, for the state of the dead, that was going to be part 4. We never got to that, okay? And so we didn't really deal with that. But we will. I mean, I've hinted at it a lot of places to a lot of other teachings. So it's not like it really has never been said. But that's the whole point was that a lot of people are, like me, who have parents and family that are in their 70s or 80s or older who are not going to be here much longer. And we worry about them, and we wonder what's going to happen to them, especially if they're not anywhere in covenant or anywhere in that page. And so I did that teaching to help give my understanding, anyway, of how that all works. Okay? And so if you listen to the teaching and have questions afterwards, you're welcome to contact me, but please just go listen to it first. Because I just gave you like a quick 10-minute answer to something that I did 3 parts of. Okay, it took a whole Sukkot, 3 teachings to get that much done. Okay, so let's give it respect to do the 3 hours plus, and then if you still have questions, which you did, you still had a question, which is fine, you heard the teaching. I will try to take that into account, and the next time I'll do it, it'll be 18 parts, and then we'll really get it done. Okay? All right. Next question. Okay, live stream.
Okay, from Teresa Ray, question if so many true believers are now scattered earthwide and being called, why are all the different calendars? And I think what she was trying to follow up was the timelines that we're talking about with the millennium. If Yah is setting this movement up.
Okay. I think I know how I want to approach this. There's a mess out there, yes. I mean, he's calling a lot of people and quote-unquote believers and all those other words that we use that really don't mean what they think, whatever. We have to understand that there's one single cause of all the mess. Okay? And I talked about this, I don't know, like every teaching. Okay? This stuff is allowed to happen and happens because there's no structure to stop it from happening. Okay? We see sometimes a child running around wild and we realize, well, part of the reason is because there's no father in the house. There's a mother that has to work, and so there's nobody there to take, so there's no structure. The structure that should have been there is not there. Okay, that's something we can see as human beings. We say, okay, well, there's a reason why that kid's running around like crazy and everything, doing all this stuff, because there's a structure missing that would prevent that. See, we don't have a structure generally. You guys are in a structure, you're in MTOI, so you have a structure here that's being developed. But in general, most of the people that are being called around the world are structureless. They're not in any kind of a structure to bring unity together. And so everybody's out there on 15 different calendars and 75 different understandings of almost everything. And they're all very happily just being led by the Ruach, so they claim. Because the Ruach obviously is confused, giving people 15 different calendars and 75 different understandings. Which makes no sense. The problem is that Yah is not going to bring that unity. Look, I'm going to go back to what Candace said, because I think she fell short of the next verses. Now, you used it for what you needed it for, but I'm going to continue it. Okay, the structure we see in Ephesians, when he talks about these levels of emissaries, prophets, and evangelists, shepherds, and teachers, there's a purpose there. For perfecting the set-apart ones to the work of service, to a building up of the body, until we all come into unity. We need leadership and structure until we all come into unity. We are not there because there's not structure. Well, I shouldn't say that. Structure is being developed. People don't want to submit to structure. They don't want to come under structure. Oh no, I'm free now in Messiah. That's like the dumbest thing you can say and put you in more trouble and more likely to do dumb stuff than almost anything you can say. Because now you feel like you can decide what to do. It's not in man to know where to put his own feet. The way that seems right to a man leads to death. Okay? He never said, you don't see anywhere in Scripture where he sets people free. They're free from Egypt to come serve him. They get freed from sin, or the mindset or the law of sin and death, where we do things that we think is right and wrong according to our own thinking, and all it does is lead to sin and death. Paul talks about that. I have a bunch of teachers where we kind of really get into that in Romans. And so we are lacking the understanding about what freedom is all about. We've been set free to come under authority, to choose freely to come under authority, to choose freely to submit under authority. Not mine, his, right? And then he places people physically to be overseers of the structure, servants of the structure, maintainers of the structure, like pillars that give the structure its form, okay? Because that's what we have to understand. And he says, look, until we all come into the unity of the belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah. Why? So that we no longer be children tossed about by 15 calendars and 65 ways of seeing the Godhead. But that's really what it's saying, isn't it? It says, so that we're no longer children tossed about by every wind of teaching, by the trickery of men and the cleverness. By the way, a lot of these teachings out there, and they're well-meaning. I know the people really believe what they're doing, but they're very clever. I don't mean clever meaning trying to trick you. I mean, they're very clever. They really come up with some very clever stuff using the verses that they use. Doesn't make it right, but I've seen some really clever stuff, which is why so many end up buying into it. Because they put it together really in a very clever way, okay? He says, this unfortunately leads people astray. But instead, these leaders are to maintain the truth and love so we can grow up in all aspects into him who is the head, Messiah. That hasn't happened yet. So if you like Paul, if you think that Paul's legitimate, I do, then Ephesians 4 is talking about us now. We haven't gotten there yet. Then you need to find that structure. I know there's a lot of people out there attacking structure. I know why, because they don't like it. They've had awful experiences. But when you ask, well, why is this allowed to happen? Because there's no structure to make it stop. That's all. It's simple. Something doesn't stop until there's something to make it stop. And so if there's no structure, if you were an island unto yourself, there's nobody there to tell you, stop it. Quit doing that. There's no authority there. And so then what happens? You get the mess that, the question that came from the live stream, that's where you get the mess from. Okay? Next question. Okay, Aubrey.
So I have a follow-up question. Well, a comment about how said...
We don't do follow-up comment questions.
Where the Christians get their doctrine about, even if they haven't been given an opportunity. It's Romans 2:12. It says, for as many as sinned without the Torah shall also perish without the Torah, and as many as sinned in the Torah shall be judged by the Torah. For not the hearers of the Torah are righteous in the sight of Elohim, but the doers of the Torah shall be declared righteous. And before that, it talks about him being impartial. So I think that's where they pull their doctrine of is, if we don't reach all these people, then they're going to die, without Jesus or.
Okay. Amen?
So that's where they get that doctrine.
Okay, but let's also remember that in chapter 2, prior to that, it says, but according to your hardness, verse 5, and the unrepentant heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath, a revelation of righteous judgment of Elohim, who shall render unto each one according to his works, everlasting life to those who by persistence in good work. Now, you can't be persistent in good work if you didn't have it revealed to you. You have to be revealed to you. He says, who seek esteem and repent and respect and incorruptibility, but wrath and displeasure for those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness. Then he leads into this other part. He's trying to give you an understanding about how there are two groups of people at this time. And his expectation is different for each. Does that make sense? But to be fair, there has to be a time where he expects the same thing from everybody. Okay, go ahead, Aubrey.
And if you keep reading, it says, even I'm summing it up and paraphrasing, but it says even if they don't have the Torah and they do what, the Torah says to do, they're a law unto themselves and, they do the good works of their heart and all the secrets of men will be revealed. So that was that. And then I have a question that's completely different, related to something else.
Hey, listen, Candace had like 5 of them. You can have 2 or 3.
My next, so we'll be in Matthew 24:32.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could explain the parable of the fig tree. Is the fig tree Israel? And can I relate that to Deuteronomy 4:26 through 30, where it talks about, when he scatters you among the nations, and from there you seek gods of wood and stone, works of the men's hands, you'll turn back to him and seek him with all your heart. Can you relate that to?
You probably could, but I mean, the main thing is that he's talking about in 24:32 using the fig tree as a marker point, a signpost.
Right.
Okay, so hey, when you see the fig tree, when you see the branch has already got is tender and has put forth leaves, the summer's near. I mean, it's sort of a timing mechanism. And the whole thing he told you previously in the chapter 24 is things that were going to happen, so you know that things are getting closer to that end time. So there's timing mechanisms. And all throughout Deuteronomy and other places, he gives you things that say, when you see this and this and this happening, and then this is the response, and then they repent and do this, then you know there's timing issues. So he's kind of giving you little markers.
What comes to my mind when I read this verse is us coming into Torah and producing fruit.
Yeah.
Returning back to Torah, just like in Deuteronomy 4, 26 through 30. We're returning back to his word, and we start producing fruit, then we know the end is near.
Well, I mean, you could read that into it. I don't think that's probably here. Here he's trying to tell you all these bad things are happening, and then just like you can recognize it when you look at the fig tree, you can recognize it looking at all these disasters. Because he continues in saying, look, just like in the day of Noah, people are going to be doing all these things, and they're not going to be paying attention. So he's trying to tell you, pay attention. See the signs that are telling you what's coming. Okay, winter, summer, etc. don't just sneak up on you. You see things happening that are signs of it. Unless you live in Tennessee where we had winter and summer, then winter and summer 8 times this winter. Okay, so that wasn't helping at all. Okay? And the bugs didn't know what to do, and the trees didn't know what to do. Because it was like 20 and 30 degrees, and then it was like 80. Then it was like 20 and 30 degrees. And it was like all throughout January and February, and I was crazy. By the way, I'm not a big fan of climate change or global warming. I think we're now suffering from climate confusion. That's my new stance. I believe in climate confusion, okay? Because that's what I observe. It seems really confused. All right? We got here, and it was like 70, almost 80 degrees. Then on Saturday, it was like 45. And now today's 80 again. That makes no sense, okay? That's way too big a swing for no reason. So I definitely think we have climate confusion. Okay, anybody else? We got just a little bit of time left. Go ahead, Rob.
All right, Freddie G. has referred to Matthew 24:23. This is talking about where Yeshua is telling the people to tell us Messiah is here, there, not to go. How would we know who to look for? Or will Yeshua gather us himself, and that's why we don't need to be looking for him? And then he also has the clarification on down is 27:28, specifically about the dead body and the vultures.
Okay, so he talks about in 27, for as lightning comes from the east and shines to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. So look, he's saying, look, a lot of people are claiming to be Messiah. And by the way, there was a lot of them claiming to be Messiah in his day, before his day, and almost right after his day. And so we have, these things that come about as you head into the eventual destruction of the temple. All right, so he's saying, don't follow all of that. It's really funny because when we do our mikvah and I blow the shofar at our picnic, we do it in sort of a public beach on a bay, okay, on Harrison Bay. And it always makes me laugh when I blow the shofar and everybody does this instead of this. Why are they looking sideways? Why are they not looking up? And I think that's what this is talking about. Stop worrying about all this sideways stuff. I'm the Messiah, he's over here, he's over there. But also I think part of this over here, over there, if we want to take it into some sort of a hint, people are describing him in ways that he's not. This is the Messiah, this is what he looks like. Listen to Beware False Prophets. If you haven't, that'll explain what I'm talking about. Okay? So, but I'm glad you all laughed, but to me, that's the thing. If you didn't know, and you didn't understand what I was doing, and you didn't know where the sound was coming from, and you heard that big shofar blast, I'd look up. Not sideways. All right, we got time maybe for one more. All right, go ahead.
I've got two here, maybe from Candace and Janet.
All right, well, let's get Janet. She's been trying to get that hand up for a long time. She's like, that mic doesn't come to the front anymore.
I was very humble, Rabbi, when you were talking about our roles. Hopefully, this is not a guarantee. I'm trying to work on my own salvation, but that even we as women will have a role in the millennium.
Of course.
And that's really humbling. But my question is related to chapter 22. Verse 30. For in the resurrection they do not marry, nor are they given in marriage, but are as messengers of Elohim in heaven. So is that because we will be as bride married to Yeshua? I mean, is there not going to be any gender in heaven?
I think that there's not a real... look, first of all, I don't make positional decisions on something that only appears like in one place. Okay? So that means that I don't know enough to be sure what is being said there. So I wouldn't worry about it. What he's trying to say is don't worry about it. It'll be fine and understood. Always refer back to 1 John, where John refers to the fact that he says, look, we don't know exactly what the deal is. We just know that when we're changed to be like him, we'll see him like he is, and then we'll get it. Okay, that's in 1 John 3:2, okay? Beloved ones, we are children of Elohim, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be, but we know that when he's revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him like he is. At that point, you'll understand this. In other words, he's saying, don't worry about it. Well, this is the kind of stuff that drives teachers crazy. Not your question, but if I was back in Yeshua's day, because that's like the people saying to me, well, does this person get in, or does that person get in, or how does this work? And so, well, whose husband is she? Well, who cares? That'll be settled out and it'll be fine. Why do you need to worry about that now? In other words, why do you need to know now? We focus on so many things that you just don't need to know now. What he's saying is, it'll be fine and you won't care. It'll be what it's supposed to be and you will be totally at peace with whatever it is. Okay? So, but we want to know because, well, am I going to know my husband? Am I going to know my wife? Are we going to have her? It'll be great. Whatever it is. All right? It'll be better than you can understand. It'll be better than you can imagine. And where eye has not seen nor ear has heard all of the wonderful things, and you can't fathom what it could possibly be like. And so he's simply saying, stop worrying about it. Okay? So this is kind of like when I give an answer to something. He's like, okay, fine. Stop worrying about that. In the kingdom, that's not an issue, is what he said. Okay? Just like it's not an issue for the messengers, it's not an issue. It won't be an issue for you. You will absolutely be content and at peace with whatever that looks like. Because remember, John, can we all agree that John had a different relationship than we have with Messiah? Can we all agree that John knew him better than we'll ever know him? And can we also agree, didn't fully get it? He says so in 1 John 3:2. He says, I don't fully get it. As much as I know, I just know that when we are changed to be of the Elohim stuff, like the amoeba, if it became a person, would understand what it means to be a human being. But as an amoeba, it could not possibly understand. But if it took on the form, it would say, oh, I get it. We will not understand fully what it's like to be of Elohim stuff until we are changed from the corruptible to the incorruptible. And then when we see him like he is, we only see him in the way he lets us see him. But when we see him as he is, we'll get it because we'll be like him. And by the way, I've always said this, and we'll close with this. You will not be like him unless you've already inside become like him. We will not be changed physically to be like him if we haven't already changed internally in our character to be like him. So that's what we need to work on, not worrying about whose husband will they be. Okay? And that's not picking on you. These questions do come up and they're curious. We are curious. We're interested. But let's not get hung up on them because sometimes the answer is, I don't know what they mean. We can't know what they mean. Happens a lot with Paul especially. We're only guessing. But even it happens here with Yeshua. I don't know what he means. I'm not even sure the people he told it to understood what he meant. His answer really was a way of saying, don't worry about it. It's not an issue. It'll be fine. Everybody will have the appropriate relationship when they get there. Can we all be content with that? Amen? All right, so to give us enough time to go ahead and wrap up and to get to the other building for lunch, and those of you that may want CDs, Manny will be in the back at the CD table to help you get out the CDs that you want. For those of you on the live stream, understand these are simply the same CDs we mail out to people who subscribe, and they're free. They're free here. We don't sell anything. So in case someone's watching, oh, I knew he would sell stuff at his conference. No, it's free. Okay, the CDs are in the back and they're free. Please only take them if you need them. In other words, you have a challenge with bandwidth or some other way of downloading them or accessing them, and you actually need to have a CD because otherwise, I know some of you are taking them because you have a collection at home. And I need this one for my collection. It's the rare Millennium and Kingdom Part 4. No. Uncle Bob has the rare old tapes that I used to make back in the day. Actually, he doesn't. He gave them back to me. I've got a bag. We're going to try and play some of those at the congregation. We'll see if they even play. The original Millennium and Kingdom might be in there, by the way. That would be interesting. We could sell those? Those we could sell. I don't even know if they'll play. They've been sitting in a bag for 20 years. They're probably dried out. They'll just snap in the machine. Anybody put a dried out tape in a machine and then you wreck your machine? Seems like that would always happen in my car. That would ruin the player in the car, and they start pulling the tape out, if you could even get it out. So I've not played them. I'm afraid they're too dry, and they're just going to snap. Okay, but anyway, so I might find a cheap $10 player, and if I don't care if I break the machine, but, But I hated when it was in my car, because I was like, now how expensive it is to get the thing out of the car and put a new player in the car? It was terrible. Okay, anyway, so let's go ahead and close this in prayer. Go ahead and raise your hand. All right, give it to Dale. Dale hasn't closed us yet. Go ahead, let Dale close us in prayer. And Manny, we'll get you on Friday. We'll let you close in prayer.
Thank you, Father, that as we come around your word, it's like a banquet table, that we can feast upon your word. Let that word just resonate in our hearts, that we can become more like Yeshua. We thank you in Yeshua's name and authority. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you very much. All right, everyone, good job.